Why learn something from scratch yourself when you can steal it from other people? Nearly every single problem you face in life has been solved by someone else. And I uncovered a solution to a problem we all face, problem of focus and attention. But it came from one of the most unlikely of places, a 70-year-old comedian named Jerry Seinfeld.
Then you have the guys above those guys who really kill it, because then those guys, they have a system for everything.
Right.
Every single minute of their day, gets plugged into a system. So, what you have to do is invent a system.
Build a new system.
To be honest, after watching this clip, it didn't really make much sense to me, but for some unknown reason, it stood out amongst the sea of content on the internet. What could Seinfeld possibly mean by high-level people are always plugged into systems? Do they really matter that much? That night in bed, those thoughts clawed at my mind. I tossed and turned and I couldn't sleep. I had to figure out what the hell Seinfeld was going on about. I consumed interview after interview of Seinfeld, and I slowly began to piece together what he meant. And one thing became apparent: he's an absolute monster. He's a comedian who's been doing comedy for nearly 50 years. He's written one of the best TV shows of all time, Seinfeld, and has accumulated net worth of over $1 billion. And at the ripe age of 70, he still does stand-up comedy, and he seems more focused and determined than ever. What can we learn from his experiences to supercharge our own success? Let's find out. The biggest productivity tip I found online about Seinfeld is whenever he finishes writing for the day, he likes to grab the calendar on his wall and put a big red X on it to show that he finished his task for the day, like this. Right there. I wrote for an hour today, so I earned the X, and it feels pretty good to do that. The idea is to build a chain of red X's to build momentum and never miss a day, and not break the chain. Through all my research, I never saw a clip of him actually saying this, so it could just be a legend at this point, or just totally false. While this little hack is nice, that's all it really is, a little hack. There has to be more to this whole system, right? It can't just be a calendar with red X's. And luckily, as I dug deeper, I realized it goes so much further than this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. From that first clip I watched of Seinfeld, one word really stuck out to me. The word systems.
Invent a system.
And Seinfeld seems obsessed with them. So what exactly is a system? To me, it sounds a lot like another word, a habit. Habits are an action you take on a consistent frequency, whether that's every day, every week, or every month. But a system seems different from a habit. I just couldn't put my finger on it. To figure this out, I had to define the difference between the two. And that's when it began to all make sense. A habit is something you do on a repeated basis, while a system is a collection of habits. So for example, if you want to brush your teeth, it'd be weird to call that a system. To me, that's more of a habit. You go and you brush your teeth every night. But we could turn it into a system if we make it an entire collection of smaller habits, like flossing your teeth, using mouthwash, water pick, whatever. That sounds like a whole oral hygiene system. I can start to see why Seinfeld is saying systems are so powerful. They're basically habits on steroids. So how did Seinfeld unlock the power behind these systems to become one of the richest and most successful people? And it all started with his unique understanding of the human brain. According to him, the brain can be categorized into two areas: the brain and the mind. He says the brain is stupid and easy to be controlled, but the mind is deeply complex and insightful. The biggest mistake people get is confusing the brain with the mind. To use the strength of your brain, you need to whip it and harness it like a stallion. Otherwise, it just roams the field doing nothing. And when Seinfeld refers to the brain, I think he's specifically referring to the behavioral reward system, and that part of the brain is responsible for human behavior. It's what makes you want to eat, have sex, and basically just do stuff. The reward system of the brain, it's really easy to manipulate. Algorithms like TikTok have shown how easy it is just to suck hours and hours of attention away from you, all by hijacking this human reward system. You give a person a reward for their action, they'll be addicted to it in no time. With the system, we're trying to do the exact same thing to ourselves, but instead of getting it from an algorithm, we're intending to do it for something productive. Instead of being exploited, you would be the one who's in control. And according to Seinfeld, it's not hard to take back control. All it takes is a few hacks, because remember, the behavior is really easy to override. You can trick your dopamine reward system and turn yourself into a productive machine. With this in mind, I needed to know more. If I could trick myself into craving work in the same way I instinctively pull out my phone, the sky would be the limit in terms of what I could achieve. So I climbed deeper down the rabbit hole and copied Seinfeld's entire system for writing. To be honest, I was shocked. It was simple. Almost too simple. He basically sits down at his desk with a paper and pen. He sets a timer for the amount of time he wants to work, and he writes. And that's it. He's only allowed to do two things: write or do nothing. So you're telling me his entire system is that he just sits down and writes jokes. There's nothing special about that. There has to be more to it, right? I was frustrated and tempted to give up. But after looking at it for a while, something started to make sense. The whole thing clicked for me. The simple nature of the system is exactly what makes it genius. Its effectiveness comes from three different things. Number one, there's a start point and an end point. When you sit down and write, you know exactly how long you're going to be writing for. The purpose of that is simple. It's a condition for success. When the timer stops, you win. Without the end point, it's too easy to feel crazy or overwhelmed, leading you to avoid the task altogether. Number two, It's easy. Literally anyone can sit down at their desk and do nothing. Now, it would be great if you could spend the entire time working at max efficiency, but you can't reliably do that every single time. If that's the expectation, it's setting the bar way too high. You have to calculate for the days where you feel like crap and don't feel like doing anything. But it's also countered with a huge potential upside. You could spend that entire hour in a highly productive state, pumping out your best work. Either way, it doesn't matter. You got yourself to sit down and attempt to write, so you win. And this leads us to number 3. The reward. When you sit down and force yourself to write for that period of time, afterwards you get to reward yourself. Typically the reward is just a sense of accomplishment that you get from attempting to write for that period of time. That intrinsic reward of being productive and doing what you set out to do is one of the best feelings in the world. And as a bonus, if you sit down and try to write for an hour, the next time it becomes a game because now you have a number to beat. Slowly you can continue to add time and build your focus and determination every single session over and over and over again. And for reference, in a recent interview, Seinfeld said that he sits down and writes for 5 hours a day at the age of 70 years old. This is his most powerful system and he hasn't changed it in over 40 years. So you can really see the benefits of creating a system like this and sticking with it for decades. The longer you do it, the better you get at it, and the more you feel rewarded for doing it. It reminds me of a quote I found from the 4-Hour Workweek. Routine enables innovation where it's most valuable. By creating a system that forces a routine around writing, you enable innovation in the area where it matters most. For Seinfeld, it's writing better jokes. Excited by this new understanding of his system, I wanted to sit down and try it for myself. So I did what any creative person does. I stole it. I would sit down every day with a timer for a specified period of time. But instead of doing 5 hours, I chose something much more reasonable. I would write for 1 hour with no distractions. Sounds easy, right? So on the first day, I sat down, cranked the timer, and I sat in front of my computer trying to work. Everything felt oddly quiet, like the world had just gone silent all of a sudden. I opened a document to start writing, and nothing happened. The blank screen stared back at me, taunting me. I forced myself to summon words from my brain onto the screen, and once the words appeared, they were barely coherent. After about 5 minutes of intense effort, my phone magically appeared in my hand, and I was browsing social media. Thought that was weird, so I put my phone away and I continued writing. Then I got stuck on a sentence, and boom! Phone was in my hand again. It was like some phone-obsessed demon had possessed my brain and forced me to pull out my phone whenever I got stuck writing. And once the day was over, I hadn't put out much, just a measly 200 words. A bit discouraged, I contemplated giving up, but I knew there was something here. So the next day, I came back and tried again, but this time I wouldn't let the cell phone win. I left that cursed box of dopamine downstairs, and I went upstairs to work. And as I sat down to work, it felt strange. My body was almost lighter, but then I got stuck again. Automatically, dozens of computer tabs opened. YouTube, Reddit, Discord, all open. It's like I programmed myself to get distracted as soon as something gets hard. I wouldn't let something so stupid stop me from setting out and doing what I wanted to do. So on day 3, I reverted back to the basics. Pen and paper. That's the way Seinfeld does it, so it felt oddly right. There are no opportunities for distractions now. And to my surprise, the words flowed from the pen to the paper, etched in black ink. But then it happened again. I got stuck. I frantically looked around the room looking for anything, but there was nothing there. My computer was shut off, my phone was out of the room. All I had in front of me was a pen and paper. An intense feeling of unease almost overwhelmed me, and it made me want to go to the bathroom or go get a snack or go get some water. But I resist that urge, and I just kept my ass in the seat. Then something strange happened. I forced myself to push through that mental roadblock, and the floodgates opened again. Words came pouring out of me onto the paper. Then I hit another roadblock, and the same thing happened. But this time I busted through in a fraction of the time. After about the first 10 minutes of like a grueling struggle, I sort of got a runner's high. But in this case, it was a rider's high. My pen was scribbling as fast as I could, and my hands started cramping from writing so fast. My perception of time had been totally distorted, and I almost jumped out of my chair when the alarm rang. The entire hour was over, but somehow it only felt like 20 minutes. Out of curiosity, I transcribed it all to my computer, and I put it through a word counter. And I had written over 1,400 words. That's nearly 10x more than I wrote the day before. Then day by day by day, it got easier. While I used to dread writing, now I look forward to it every day. And it might sound really cheesy, but I actually felt better about myself. My general well-being felt higher after doing this. Before this system, I always felt like the writing I did wasn't good enough. And that was for a simple reason. I just didn't have a good way to measure my success. But now I do. It's really easy to win if all you have to do is sit down and work. And my productivity has skyrocketed as a result. Seeing those red X's stack day after day, and my writing continually increasing is the most satisfying part of the system. At this point, I'm 30 days deep, and I don't think I can ever go back. I'm gonna steal this system and use it forever, but I was curious, could I add more systems in my life? Could I truly be plugged into multiple systems like he said in the video? Instead of one just for writing, could I do one for cleaning, for cooking, for everything? Would I be able to accomplish more and feel better about it? So I devised a plan to make a system for something else, meal prep. And you can learn more about it right here in this video.